Chattanooga, Tennessee, David Tulis.
I hope you like us on Facebook. Go to Facebook, the Nooga Radio page. It says Nooga Radio 92.7 FM and AM 1240. But I think Nooga Radio is enough to find us. And do me the favor, David Tulis here, do me the favor of liking us. It does something in the algorithm to make us more prominent, maybe makes us more accessible. And you know how Facebook and Google are at war against big players such as Ron Paul and the Ron Paul Institute for Peace and Prosperity. That organization has been told it can't monetize certain of its media materials because, well, not sure why. Just somehow it's part of the real media, and so is being warred against by YouTube, Google, and the technocratic establishment represented by those two gigantic corporations. But here in the hinterlands where we pass without being noticed, David Tulis and Nooga Radio, make sure you like us, and we will do better in our delivery of free services and hopefully worthy insights through our major hosts. I'm the host in the morning, David Tulis, every morning at 9 o'clock here. And then in the afternoon, we've got Sean Hannity at 3 o'clock. But just so you know, we've got a great news hour at noon. And at 1 o'clock, there is the policy and power story analysis by Bloomberg News, live Bloomberg News, and also a market report at 2 o'clock, live every day with the best market analysis that is for high-end people like you, people who matter, people who have investments, people who have a need for the current news on capital flows out of Nigeria, right? This is David Tulis and Carl. You're live on the air. What's on your mind?
Hey, it's Mike Steele. It's kind of like the mayor of Chattanooga, Google and YouTube, where they don't recognize him as legitimate. I love when they use that word, newscaster or newsgatherer. And the mayor of Chattanooga did that to David Tulis, the only one that does real local journalism on the internet, on the radio, in paper, that really does investigative reporting. The mayor of Chattanooga refuses to allow David Tulis, the real journalist, into a meeting. And I have to laugh when I see the TV stations, David, when they're discussing the mayor and they're licking his boots, how they put such pretty pictures of him in the background. I wonder if what's going to take to clean the brown off their nose. It's interesting that Dan Rather went crazy in 2000 when the internet was taken over. I'll never ever forget the setting, the press conference where he's like, "How can we control the news now? This can't happen. There were only 3 sources of news, the major networks, and now the average citizen is reporting the news. News is new. What's going on? What's happening? The system is collapsing. It's collapsing.
Centralized systems are collapsing.
What's that?
I'm just saying centralized systems are collapsing, whether in news gathering, news reporting, or education. That's why I'm proposing a 50% tax cut for the Hamilton County schools that would free up a great deal of capital and let decision-making and delivery of services be localized and decentralized, privatized.
Well, David, it's not just, I don't mean to interrupt you, it's not just centralization. It's all government. All government. Look at what the Federal Communications didn't say, David, you can't speak or ask questions. It was your local government that said that, not the federal government. The problem is when you go after the power base, whether it's your local dog catcher or the president, and they want to shut up that voice, that independent, objective voice. So it's not just about decentralization. I was talking to my other half about the government schools. When you go to a government public school, how sad is it that it looks like you're going into a prison 50 years ago. These should be centers of enlightenment and education where you go in, there's technology everywhere, where everything is light and bright, and children want to learn. This reminds me of the Soviet Union, all the public schools circa 1966. Okay, thanks, Dave.
Yeah. Well, thanks, Mike. There is something very daunting looking about modern school buildings. They have the architecture says something about the thinking and the way the people who go into those buildings are supposed to think. If you look at the public library downtown, and I believe also the police services center on McCall Highway are designed in the brutalist design. Now, brutalism was an architectural fad that was readily adopted by the Eastern Bloc and the Stalinists. It had a heavy emphasis on raw concrete and sort of inhuman scale. And the public library is in the brutalist design, though the man whom I interviewed from the architectural firm that designed that building sort of said it's mixed. He sort of only wanted to admit half of what the claim is about that public library design. And Marxist governments like it because of its impersonalism. Buildings look like bunkers. The police department in the brutalist design is a bunker, and you wonder, why do we have a bunker, a military style bunker, all hunkered down behind concrete and recessed glass? Why do we have that? It's very daunting, very impressive, and it's almost designed, as it were, to make people fearful. And we know that that's not the case at all. We know that the police are not about making people fearful at all. Even minorities, they want minorities to love them and to be appreciative. So I think, Mike, one of your points is that the state itself is invariably the enemy of the individual, which we know it is, but it has a large program to destabilize individuals and destabilize the family, and to have its own power raised as against that of the individual, the private business, and the family. And it is a long war against Christendom, and that is waged through the state and by the state. Invariably, the modern state is atheistic. It claims sovereignty as against God, and it doesn't recognize spheres of influence and sphere sovereignties, if you will, that belong to individuals, that belong to lines of business, trades, occupations, and families, primarily the family. And the state has been always party to the atomization process. And that the atomization process, if you want to think about it, is one that breaks up intervening bodies of power, intervening lesser bodies of power, whether they be associations or private insurance associations, as there were many of them in the late 1800s, many civic clubs, civic organizations. We live in a time of institutions. We live in a day where there are programs everywhere, and yet there are very few seeming intervening bodies between the individual and the state. We're sort of naked as against the state, and that's called atomization, where there are not the former community connections and community bonds, neighborhood bonds, town bonds, city bonds, county bonds that made people really with a kind of oneness. And government, with its programs, its welfare, its free money, its experts, atomizes society. And a society like that is not sustainable. It is highly brittle. Its markets, as we have in Wall Street, are highly brittle, highly vulnerable. They're held aloft by kind of false confidence, I would suggest. Now, one of the biggest enemies of local economy, if I can just borrow from Rand Paul, is what he calls socialism. Socialism, I know, is a kind of fighting word, but we had an open use of that term by doctrinaire leftists a couple Thursdays ago, 2 weeks ago now, at the rally at Coolidge Park. They were socialists who want a state answer to every problem, right? They complain about the state. They complain about capitalism owning the state, which is true. Capitalism and capitalists do own the state, and you could call that the deep state. It is a capitalist corporate control of many things that are illicitly owned by private parties who are seeking profit. Much of the critique, I think, of the left is just, but the solution of socialists, including one unnamed speaker, I think his name was David, quoted in detail here by Nooganomics and also this radio station, is more of the same. There is no, Bernie Sanders does not have a solution to the problems of socialism, which is private cartels and rent-seeking cartels. They own the state, but the socialists don't have an answer to that problem. In fact, they just make it worse. They do not believe in the free market, and they do not believe in the family because they have queer theology, queer thinking, lug butt ideology. controls them, and so they are either hyper individualists, transgender, transsexual oriented people who think that you can remake yourself. In other words, hyper individualism, suicidal hyper individualism on one hand, and then total statism and fascism on the other. The left is fascistic, right? The Nazis were leftists. the Nazis were leftists. You say, well, no, they were rightists. Benito Mussolini's party in Italy was rightist. No, they were all leftists. Okay, they were all, the right and the left are just squabbling siblings of the same progressive argument. Rand Paul makes a couple of great points in an interview, actually in a column that I'm holding here in my formerly newsprint ink stained fingertips. He says that socialism just plain doesn't work. Millions of people are starving to death because of it. And the Soviet Empire, he says, fell without a bullet being fired. Why? Because the engine of capitalism defeated the sputtering and defective motor of socialism. What's the defect? And he says, well, Friedrich Hayek says the defect in socialism is conceit, which is the flaw inherent in Greek. I'm told the word is eparsi, or arrogance. It is precisely an elitism or a form of arrogance, Rand Paul says, that underlies socialism. That's why I propose a 50% tax cut in Hamilton County to give the schools a jolt of excitement, make them really think, okay, what's important and what can we jettison? Because as Tim Boyd points out, there is waste at every turn. There's waste that does not have to be addressed when more money comes in, right? When more money comes in, the waste just gets the wasted people, right? There are people who are there who are themselves waste, kind of a waste product. They're just grafters and grifters, right? The whole leisure class of people who are administrators, stewarding federal dollars and the lunch program and the like. They'll suddenly be out of work. They'll be out of work, and they'll have to get legitimate they can fill out a wanted form in any of these hundreds of businesses in the Hickston area that have help wanted signs up. They are all over the place. Socialism relies upon a belief that planners are smarter than the rest of us, Rand Paul says, that a complicated economy requires central government planning. Hayek describes this fatal conceit of socialist thought, that centrally planned policies are necessary for market efficiency, that individuals like you are incapable of spontaneously arriving at a marketplace that benefits buyers and so there can't be, he says, a Politburo that will possess as much information as the market as a whole. That is to say, everybody in a particular area, say education, right? All parents are in the educational marketplace, but because there's a cartel that compels payment and then compels attendance effectively, they are left helpless and hapless, and they relent. They relent against sometimes a few times their own best judgment. No one person or Politburo of people can ever possess as much knowledge as can be instantaneously gathered and processed by what Hayek calls, quote, the separate differing information of millions, which is precipitated in prices that serve as guide to further decisions. In other words, pricing is how you know what something is worth today. Now, prices can go up and prices can go down. For example, I'm an editor of a homeschool newsletter that's gone digital, and I'm dealing with advertisers and saying, well, we have a digital edition of the Esprit newsletter at csthe.org. csthea.org is where it'll be lodged. And I don't know that advertising prices are right to be cut in half, right? We're cutting our prices in half for advertising, and a full-page ad is $59. Well, who knows? That may be way too much money. We may have to cut it down to $29 or $19. Who knows? Maybe $9. We'll have to see. Of course, if you charge less, you get more advertising, and the articles may be harder to find if there's a flood of ads in a newsletter like that. But the point is that pricing reflects demand, right? If you have a high price, you'll have less demand. If you have a low price, you'll have more demand. So what does the editor of that online newsletter want? But I'm flexible, and I'm telling advertisers by correspondence, I'm not sure what the rate will be, but if you want to sign up for a year, go ahead and write a check for me now at 9 times $59. And if the price goes down in changing market conditions, well, you'll get a rebate or you'll get more ads for your check. That's what I said in correspondence to these advertisers, because the marketplace changes, needs change, demands change, and so we have to be flexible. And we do that here too on the radio station. You can sign up for. We say sign up for a year, get a year's contract. You can get out anytime you want to as an advertiser, and you lock in your price. You lock in the low price because for us the price is always going up in advertising because demand goes up, inventory goes down. There are more listeners, more people want to get on as advertiser with me, David Tulis, here at Nooga Radio. Hyatt goes on to explain that in complex conditions, order and adaptations to the unknown can be achieved more effectively. All right, how? By a committee or by the market? Well, he says by decentralizing decisions, and that allowing a division of authority actually extends the possibility of overall order. Centralizing control and education in Hamilton County schools creates disorder. It is irrational to have a central authority for 43,000 children. It's just irrational. Things cannot possibly work. Anything that big cannot produce a marketplace satisfying result. Look at general discontent about public education, even among people who are in the system and are committed to the system. They keep talking about reform. They keep talking about the laggard schools, and special programs have to be made for them. Well, systems that large can't possibly function. Systems that are premised on coercion through taxation cannot possibly serve the master. We heard from an attorney a moment ago, Sarah Garrity from the Southern Center for Human Rights, and she's objecting to for-profit bail bonding, and rightly so. Why? Well, you can't serve two masters. You can't serve, if you're in the bail bonding business, the claim of profit on one hand and the claim of justice ostensibly through the state on the other. So we don't want centralized solutions. We want decentralized solutions. Now, weather management is something that's highly centralized already. I was watching this morning Dane Wigington give an analysis of the Houston storm, and he provides convincing discussion that the storm route disallowed the dissipation of that storm. The storm route is intentional, and that it's managed by Galveston radio wave emitters and other platforms that are run by the greatest central authority of all in North America, and that's the federal government. And if you want to explore these questions, it's something that's worth thinking about. I'm the journalist here in Chattanooga. David Tulis is my name, who makes much of the geoengineering story, the solar radiation management, geoengineering, weather management, weather control story, for which we see evidence here in Chattanooga. Look at Facebook. All right, I mentioned this story about Tennessee attaining statewide compliance with federal particulate pollution standards in Chattanooga.com this morning. I matched that story with pictures I took August the 29th. August the 29th was Tuesday. There were bizarre patterns in the sky. What I would say are official pollution. Now that would be, if we believe Dr. Herndon in San Diego, that would be the emission of coal fly ash over the skies of Saudi Daisy. Look at two photographs, the best two I took on that day at Facebook at Nooga Radio. These are skies that are policy skies, centrally planned for a purpose. Now, I don't think the weather should be managed by anybody. I don't think the weather should be controlled by Raytheon. That the government, with its 500 strato tankers, apparently, which have been worn out from years of use in the coal fly ash deposit program, I don't believe there should be centralized control of the weather. And that objection, I know, sounds kind of slight. There shouldn't be sky striping, right? If there's a sky striping program, it should not be taking place, because we're breathing in all these toxic chemicals that are part of the waste product, the coal industry waste product, dispersed in the sky. However, we're reading a story in the Wednesday edition of Chattanooga.com about Tennessee's attaining a statewide compliance with particulate pollution standards. And Tennessee has clean air, and Governor Haslam says it's as clean as it has been since the beginning of the modern industrial era. We are a state, Governor Haslam says, that protects the environment while growing our economy. It's not an either or scenario in Tennessee. Today's announcement is another indicator that we can achieve both. He says that the air quality in over Tennessee has not come at the expense of economic growth. Since 91, economic output has nearly tripled to $300 billion. Senator Lamar Alexander says this decision means more good jobs and healthier air for East Tennesseans, as well as better views of the Great Smoky Mountain. Receiving federal attainment for particle solution further shows that the air is demonstrably cleaner in Anderson, Knox, Blount, Loudoun, and Roane counties, and will attract more industries to East Tennessee. This cleaner air is directly attributable to federal clean air legislation, which I voted for. TVA's decision to put pollution control equipment on all its coal plants, and he says years and end of work by state and local leaders and industries in these counties. And he goes on to say that we've reduced ozone 25% from 2000 to 2016, and 50% reduction in particle pollution over the same period. All of that's fine. So what we have a conflict between one program by the deep state over the skies of Chattanooga, as you can see in photographs posted this morning by me, your host, David Tulis, on Facebook at Nooga Radio, and efforts on the ground to suppress the upward blowing of particles such as coal fly ash. A great effort. Regulation on the ground down to the details. You can't pollute. Pollution is bad. And if you have a fire without a permit, we may fine you $500. Or if you can't pay, we'll sell your case to a bond company, and that company will charge you an additional $500. And you now, though you can't pay, owe $1,000. We're going to keep you in jail till you pay that $1,000. That's what we have on the ground. Again, the interest in clean air. Wow. The good people and their jets, their contractors, their military secrets, their secrecy, their national necessities operate with impunity, with no consequence in the skies over the county, emitting who knows what. Well, I would say emitting coal fly ash, particularly the most useful, the most powerful recycling element that we've come across, used in everything from particle board to tarmac, and also as part of the great sky shield over the country. Dane Wigington, in his interview, says that the storm that has riled up the coast has served many purposes. One of them is to enhance albedo, which is the reflectivity of the surface of the Earth in this part of the world for now, reducing temperatures elsewhere for the purposes of national security and the national benefit. And we don't know whom to thank for all these good things. We really don't know whom to thank, though Dane Wigington names some profiting companies with disdain and disregard, because they have been involved in managing a storm that has not dissipated inland but run along the coast and maintaining terrific strength, dropping rain for days and days over Houston in what is said to be the heaviest rainfall in American history. Again, human intervention. We see it here, we see it there. We see it on the ground, we see it in the air. This is David Tulis, favoring individual action and local economy and free markets here. David Tulis, I've got some important announcements.
The Tennessee Valley's news, talk, and sports leader, Nooga Radio.